It's 11:07 on your hometown station, KHTS FM 98.1 and AM 1220. It's Menji. That's Jen over there. We've been taking over the airwaves. Now we gotta talk about something serious. It's about to get heavy, so just heads up, just so you're ready. Imagine a commercial plane holding 200 people crashes, and then it happens again and again. And it keeps going on for years. That tragedy and destruction is even hard to fathom. And yet, 200 Americans every single day die from fentanyl. That's 200 Americans gone yesterday. That's 200 Americans that are going to be gone before today is done. I think the biggest difference is probably after the first plane crash, we're not waiting around to try to figure out what those safety measures are going to be and what we need to take to figure out how to prevent it. And yet, last year, the DEA seized over 79.5 million fentanyl laced fake pills and nearly 12,000 pounds of fentanyl powder. We're halfway through this year and they have already seized 17.9 million of these fake pills and almost 2,000 pounds of this powder. That was a stat from yesterday while I was preparing all of this.
Mhm.
I'm sure in just 24 hours, that number has dramatically increased. These are seriously scary numbers, but I'm not telling you this just to make you feel uncomfortable for the sake of being uncomfortable. It's really more of a call to action that this is happening. And at this point, it's affected you or someone that you know. This is going to be a really tough conversation, but stick around because we're going to be having a conversation that might actually help save a life. In studio, we have Jaime Puerta, who has been personally affected by this and for years now has been actually trying to do something about it. Jaime, welcome to the studio.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, so you went down to Washington, D.C. to talk directly to lawmakers. Before we get into that, I think it's important for people to know how you got to this point, if for people that haven't heard your story before.
Thank you so much. Again, my name is Jaime Puerta. I'm the president of Void, Victims of Illicit Drugs. How I got into this fight, I was directly affected when my own 16 and a half-year-old son, Daniel Puerta Johnson, died on April the 6th of 2020 due to fentanyl poisoning. I walked into his bedroom on April the 1st at approximately 8:30 in the morning and found him in a state that I knew that something bad had happened. And I called 911, obviously, and they came and they took him first to Henry Mayo. And after that, to make a very long story short, when we got to the Los Angeles Children's Hospital, a team of doctors there told me and his biological mother, Denise, that I'm sorry, but there's nothing that we can do for your son. His brain has just been, you know, deprived of oxygen for such a long time that he's in a deep, deep coma and he's not coming back. There's nothing that we can do to help him. So his mother and I made the agonizing decision to stop all life saving measures that were with him, the technology keeping him alive. His kidneys were starting to fail, as was his liver and so April the 5th, that evening, she and I decided to stop everything. And then on April the 6th, a team of doctors came in at 3:45 in the afternoon, disconnected everything, and my son passed away in peace at exactly 5:08. 5:08 in the afternoon. Approximately 2 or 3 weeks after that, well, while I came home that first night and I found half a pill on top of his dresser, and I grabbed that pill and I took it with me to Los Angeles Children's Hospital, and thinking that maybe they could do something to reverse the effects that had on him and then bring him back. Well, obviously, they told me that I'm sorry, there's nothing they can do. But what they did is they gave that pill to the local Santa Clarita sheriff's station. A detective went out there, picked it up, and they took it to their own lab. And weeks later, when a detective came to my home and said, "Mr. Puerta," I asked him, well, what exactly took my son's life? And he goes, "Well, I'm very sorry, but your son died of an overdose." And I go, "Really?" And I go, "Well, what did he overdose on?" And he said, "Well, the pill that we took, it was made of just illicit fentanyl and binder." And I go, "Yeah, but the pill that I saw looked like a blue M30 oxycodone pill. So please explain to me what pharmaceutical pill or pharmaceutical grade pill like oxycodone, is that enough to take the life of a 16 and a half year old boy?" And he goes, "No, because it wasn't oxycodone. It was fentanyl. And I go, well, then that's not an overdose. That's what we call a poisoning, because my son did not intentionally, you know, take fentanyl. What he took was an oxycodone pill. And that's why I found I'm not making excuses for him. He made a terrible mistake. He made a terrible mistake and it cost him his life. But our children are supposed to learn from their mistakes. They're not supposed to die from them, which is why I've been on this war path since April the 6th, 2020. That very night, I became an activist in this problem. And I have found through my research and a deep dive into everything that's going on, just exactly how this crisis is affecting the United States of America. I mean, if you take a look at the numbers alone for 2022, we're talking about 122,000 drug deaths in the United States. Roughly 75% of those were due to illicit fentanyl and its analogs. And according to a study that came out in 2022 by UCLA, they came to the conclusion that we are losing approximately 22 adolescents per week in the United States between the ages of 11 and 17, who, by the way, are not addicted. It's taking non-addicted first-time drug users at record amounts. I mean, it's horrifying. And we've been out there trying to spread this message. We're trying to warn people, but due to the very heavy stigma of addiction and overdose, when you hear of somebody who has died, let's just take, for example, Prince. When Prince died, they say, well, he died of an overdose. And that, well, he's a rock star. Rock stars die due to overdoses. What most people don't know is that, he had been jumping off of pianos since he was 15 years old. He had a really bad back. He lived with chronic pain. He reached out to somebody, bought what he thought was an oxycodone pill. It was a fake pill, again, illicit fentanyl, and they found him dead in the elevator of his home in Minnesota.
Yeah, I think that's very important to kind of highlight is that these are not drug addicts. A
Correct.
lot of this is unintentional. I remember I was speaking to a teacher over at Saugus. I don't know if you remember a couple of years ago. Some students overdosed over at Central Park, and they were found there. And they were some of his students. And when I was talking to him, you know, he got very emotional. He's been a teacher for long, and he's actually experienced, the loss of different students through different means. But this was a different animal. This was something that he said they didn't even have a chance. There was not even a second chance, and that's really kind of the monster of fentanyl is you think you're taking something, and suddenly you don't even have the chance to go, "Oh, you know what? This drug wasn't for me. This high was awful for me." Nope, that's it. There is no second chance for you.
Recreational drug use, and back in my day, I'm a product of Burbank High School, class of 1980. And I can tell you right now that probably 95% of the class of 1980, Burbank High, would be dead.
Mm.
And I'm not making this up. I'm telling you, it's a very, it's a problem. But again, due to the stigma, most people don't understand it. We are a society that consumes a lot of medication, and I think we are the number one country in the world with as many prescription medications out there. You turn on daytime TV, and you'll find anything from diabetes to cancer, everything under the sun. And this generation of children, for some reason, just do not seem to have kind of like the coping skills that my generation had. I mean, I say this flippantly, but if I had a problem with the kid, I'll see you at 3 o'clock at the flagpole and we'll take care of it there, right?
Yeah.
you know, now, kids who are suffering some kind of emotional trauma, physical trauma, there's stress at home because of finances, broke up with my boyfriend, broke up with my girlfriend, or I'm getting ready for the SATs, I'm taking tests, ready to go to college. Somebody tells them in their group circle of friends, and hey, you know what, if you take this pill it's going to make you feel a lot better. College kids wanting to cram, take Adderall, right? And they'll take Adderall because they want to cram because they weren't studying a lot, so they'll cram for a week, and that Adderall keeps them up, they're able to cram, hyper focused. And we know of students in the universities who have never taken drugs before, who go online, buy what they think is a pharmaceutical grade Adderall, but in reality, it's a fake pill made of methamphetamine and fentanyl, and it kills them. And we have example after example after example. And I'm not sitting here trying to scare people. I'm just stating facts.
Yep. Yep.
Well,
Just
and we're talking about you mentioned, your environment that you grew up in, Jaime, and it was a different world, and I was the same when I was in high school, totally different. I think now kids and young adults obviously have access to social media, which I was doing a little bit of research before our interview, and that was one of the main culprits, that these kids, it's no longer where you're going down a dark alley to talk to the guy that's a little shady to get something, to give you that high. Now I can just go on whatever app. I won't specifically name. You can if you like.
I will.
Yeah, you can go on this app and boom, there's somebody with whether you're looking for within hours, maybe minutes. It's extremely accessible, and that's scary.
That is very scary. Drug dealers have been able to penetrate a segment of society that was always very elusive to them, which is our children. You just nailed it. Yeah, and when you wanted, back in my day, if you wanted to buy a joint or a dime bag of weed, you went to somebody's apartment and bought it. Whatever, or whatever you were going to consume, cocaine, whatever. Not the hard stuff. You would go to somebody's house. But what's happened is that they've become they're using the laws, our own laws, they're using it against us, and I'll explain that in a minute. But what they're doing is they're distributing these drugs through social media apps where children are abundant, especially Snapchat. I am a parent who is an active plaintiff. I have a lawsuit against them. Myself and 7 other parents first started it. Now I think there's 85 that have joined the lawsuit, and it was actually accepted by Judge Lawrence Riff out of the California Superior Court. And why this is important is because many times in 1996, the Communications and Decency Act of 1996 was written. It was a law that was basically trying, when the internet first came out, what they wanted to do is they wanted to protect free speech on these internet platforms. But our legislators, or our legislator, our lawmakers back there could never have envisioned where the internet would be in 2024. So, they're using this law to protect themselves. Not only do we have drug dealers on these apps, but we also have pedophiles. We have sextortion. We have cyberbullying. We have all of this nefarious activity on there. And as a nation, we haven't been able to do much about it because these platforms are blanketing themselves with Section 230C. So,
and what is Section 230C?
Section 230C is a section of the Communications and Decency Act of 1996, which basically what it does, so I won't get into too much in the weeds, is it basically protects your free speech on the internet. That's basically what it is. So like back in the day, if you have 2 terrorists speaking on the phone and saying, well, we're going to place I hate this analogy, but I'll just use it. Well, I'm going to place a bomb at this bank, and the bomb blows up. The federal government can't hold the facilitator of that communication accountable for those 2 people having that conversation. In other words, if they had a conversation through AT&T, I can't sue AT&T. Because AT&T, basically what they were doing, they were only facilitating the conversation, but yet they weren't responsible for it. But it's very different with what I'm talking about with the cyberbullying, the sextortion, the drug dealing. If it's illegal on the street, it should be illegal also on the internet, period.
Yeah, we've been talking to Jaime Puerta on the fentanyl crisis that's currently happening right now. And even though the media has kind of moved on to different topics, it's not gone. It's not going away. And here's the big thing. Okay, so fentanyl is this dangerous monster. Well, why doesn't the government just come in, find the manufacturers, and shut them down? Pretty easy, right? But it's not that easy, is it?
No, well, there's a myriad of things that we could do to really quash and abate all of these deaths from happening, but we don't have Uh, and I'm not going to blame this administration because this has been happening since Barack Obama. So it happened under the Obama administration, it happened under the Trump administration, and now it's happening under the Biden administration. But obviously, because of the problems that we're having with the open border and things like that, it's happening much more. What most people don't realize is this, and I'm not wearing a tin hat or something like that. I was invited. My organization was invited along with another organization that I co-chair with, which is FacingFentanylNow.org. We were tasked with getting parents to Washington D.C. on April the 14th or the 18th, I believe, where the China Select Committee, which the chair is Mike Gallagher, they did a deep dive investigation into the fentanyl crisis into the United States. It was a bicameral, bipartisan investigation. This was an investigation that took approximately a year and a half, and they had some amazing results with this investigation. This is not a conspiracy theory. I'm not of that type. I'm not going to put my name out there and say, because I could lose
The credibility.
credibility, and I'm not going to do that. If you don't believe me, go online and go on to the China Select Committee and look for the reports on the fentanyl crisis. You can read it for yourself. Again, bipartisan, both Democrats and Republicans. I was amazed that they were both able to work together because it was just, it was just fantastic. But some of the things that came out of that investigation is the following. The Communist Party of China, the Chinese Communist Party, directly subsidizes the manufacturing and export of illicit fentanyl materials and other synthetic narcotics through tax rebates. Let me explain that. So, what they're saying there is under the Trump administration, Peter Navarro, who was the President Trump's chief of staff, was able to broker a deal with Xi Jinping where they scheduled fentanyl in and of itself. So then they made it illegal to make fentanyl in the People's Republic of China. But what they didn't do is they didn't schedule the precursors that are needed, the materials that are needed to make fentanyl. So what happened is that through the Communist Party and the People's Republic of China, with the Mexican cartels, the CJNG and the Sinaloa cartel, they started sending all the precursors to Mexico. They taught the Mexican cartels how to make fentanyl. Okay, they sold them the pill presses. They sold them the dyes to make the illicit or the counterfeit pills, and in turn, the Mexican cartels are giving all of their money to the Chinese, and they're laundering that money. Now, it's illegal to sell this drugs or these precursors in China. And these websites that they have are. When they made this investigation, they found the websites, 7 e-commerce platforms, 30,000 manufacturing companies of these precursors in China alone, where people were able to go on there and buy this. If you try to buy it in China, you are executed. If you sell it and export it, not only are they incentivized monetarily, but they get also tax rebates for all of this. And there is a Chinese prison that is run by the Communist Party of China itself, and the inmates there work directly in one of those manufacturing plants, making these precursors and selling them to these cartels. So many of these substances are illegal under the PRC's own laws and have no known legal use worldwide. Like its export tax rebates for legitimate goods, the CCP subsidizes all of these illegal drugs, incentivizes international synthetic drug sales from the PRC, and the CCP never disclosed this program to anybody in the world. They never disclosed any of this. Not only that, like I said before, they give monetary grants and awards companies who are openly trafficking illicit fentanyl materials and other synthetic narcotics. They also found that many of these manufacturing plants, it's the elite party members who are the owners of these manufacturing companies, okay? Not only that, they failed to prosecute time and again when the United States presents evidence of these drug dealers who are in China and presents the evidence. They don't prosecute them. They let them go. They don't do anything.
Yeah, and In my own research, I found that it's if a Chinese manufacturer, all they really have to do is just slightly alter the formula, and bam, you have a brand new chemical that's completely unregulated that has the same effect. And so, just to recap here, a Chinese supplier manufactures the main parts of that drug. They ship it to Mexico,
That's
where the
correct.
drug cartels assemble the rest of it, and then it's smuggled into the US in the traditional way. So, if you didn't know how fentanyl was coming into the United States, in a nutshell, that's how it happens.
It's coming in through the legal ports of entry, by the way. It's at only 0.04% is coming in through illegal immigrants. Most of it is coming in through the legal ports of entry. It's coming in through the truckloads. We have enough fentanyl in this nation to kill every single man, woman, and child in the United States 10 times over
Jeez.
right now.
I was crunching
Wow.
some numbers last night, and I found that we are statistically more likely to die from fentanyl than a car crash now.
Wow.
More than a
What a
car crash,
shame.
more than cancer, more than gun violence, and more than suicide. Not combined, but more in each one of those
Hmm.
categories.
And
And for the first time since World War II, the average lifespan of every single man, woman, and child in the United States has actually decreased, despite the medical technology that we have. The age span of everybody in the United States has actually decreased due to fentanyl poisoning and overdoses. And here's the other thing too, and really quick: if you don't die from an ingestion of fentanyl, you become immediately addicted to it because it's 100 times stronger than morphine or heroin.
so I mentioned at the very start of this, I wanted to give out some information that could possibly save a life here. And so what I found that is that there are rapid fentanyl drug testing kits that are only $1. So if you feel compelled, obviously, I don't condone doing any street drug, but there are drug testing kits for this fentanyl. Naloxone, Narcan, is about $100, but I found out that in most insurances will actually provide this for free. So if you or a loved one are experiencing an emergency, make sure to call 911. If you or a loved one are experiencing a mental health crisis, call 988. You matter to someone. Be safe. You can go to our website. We've been talking to Jaime Puerta on the fentanyl crisis. You can check out his organization, stopthevoid.org, to learn how you can support his cause, how you yourself can be active in this issue as well. You can follow our Facebook to re-listen to this whole discussion that we have. I'm going to leave you with a song that I discovered in this research. It's from an artist named Jesse Wells, and I feel like it perfectly sums up everything that we just talked about. You've been listening to KHTS FM 98.1 and AM 1220.